Thank you. Thank you so much for watching today's message. I'm aware that there's some of you who watch these messages who've never been to our church and never met me. There are others of you who have been part of this church and perhaps now live a distance away and stay connected by watching these messages, and still some others who may be homebound, and this is a way that they can connect. You can connect and hear a message. Whatever your situation, I want you to know that you are a part of our extended community, and that the love that we experience here, we hope and pray that it communicates through the camera lens to you, to know that God really loves you right where you are. If you are willing, we want you to reach back out to us. Share with us your comments on these messages. You can connect with us right on the YouTube channel. There's a place for comments. Or find us on Facebook and share with us there, or on our website. If you'd like to support this ministry, we encourage you to make a donation at mccgd.org. You just click on the Donate Now button, or you can send a check to the address at the bottom. We are here for you, and together we want to share a message of love and hope with the world. Thanks again.
You're welcome here just as you are. Your thoughts are welcome. Your doubts are welcome. We believe God is here ready to engage with you. Whether you use the word or name God, or divine presence, or source of love, or creator, or higher power, or you're not really sure, you're welcome here. Over the next 7 weeks, we are gathering to explore God.
Today we're asking the question that many people ask in the depths of their hearts. Is there a God? Now, we might be preaching to the choir, but many people ask that. Even people of faith ask, is there a God? Really? Everybody has questions about God and about spirituality. None of us has it all figured out. So seek. Ask your questions. We'll never know the answers if we don't ask the questions and check things out.
Haven't there been times in your life when you've asked, does God really exist? I know I have. Maybe these letters from kids to God might help give us permission to honestly explore this question. God, are you really invisible, or is that just a trick? Lucy.
God, it's okay that you made those different religions, but don't you get mixed up sometimes? Arnold.
Dear God, I wish there was no such thing as sin. I wish there was no such thing as war. Tim.
Dear God, how come you did all those miracles in the old days, but don't do any now? Seymour. You see, the issue for some of us is if God doesn't.
Let me put it this way, I'd like to think that God is real, for one reason or the other.
I don't believe in God because the idea that an omniscient, loving being would judge me, who is mortal and ignorant and tiny, for all eternity based on a few years' experience, I find to be rather a cruel thought.
Look at everything around us, from the universe to our being to the ability to have consciousness. I think that it can only be explained by God.
All the power that God has, he, she, it has given to me. So we're definitely one.
I hope there's something else out there. It'd be fun to experience whatever God has in store next. Either that or we're all just evolved apes.
There's so many things where it's just like that couldn't have just happened. Like that has to have something behind it, and I believe that something's God. For all we know, there could be aliens out there. I have no idea, to be honest.
I was raised atheist. I don't believe in a higher power, but, you know, I also don't claim to know everything about the world, and I think maybe it's a bit arrogant for people to try and believe they know the truth to anything.
For me, yes. Yes, it's obvious. There are like so many things, for me personally, so many things that I've been through, and after that I'm like, well, that had to be God.
The pat answer is that how can there be no God when there's all this beauty around us? But I think about evolution and science and all of that kind of thing and think, how can you not just accept it the way it is?
Really don't know what to believe, to be quite honest, so it's kind of just really just living it day by day and just trying to be a really good person.
I don't know. I don't know if there is one. I just pretend, I guess, and hope that there's something else out there.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The clouds proclaim the work of God's hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world.
Just like the deer that craves for streams of water, my whole being craves for you, God. My whole being thirsts for God, for the living God. When will I come and see my God's face? My tears have been my food, both day and night. As people constantly question me, where's your God now? I will say to God, my solid rock, why have you forgotten me? Why do I have to walk around sad, oppressed by enemies? With my bones crushed, my foes make fun of me, constantly questioning me, where's your God now? Why, I ask myself, are you so depressed? Why are you so upset inside? Hope in God, because I will again give God thanks, my saving presence and my God.
Sounds like the psalmist had some moments of knowing without a doubt that God exists, and moments of doubt, or at least asking, if you exist, God, where are you? Certainly we can hear that the psalmist had friends who did not believe in God, right? And that peer pressure had an impact. So let me ask you a question. Do you live as if there is a God, or as if there is no God? If you said, yes, there is a God, does your life differentiate between believing God exists and living as if God exists? You see, one of the fastest growing religions in America is practical atheism, which is populated by those who claim to believe in God but live as if God doesn't exist. Let's hear what some others have to say on this important question.
So it has been amazing to be married to a physicist. One of the things that Catherine has said to me that I think is so striking is we now know, for example, that there are these cosmological constants, these ways that the universe is tuned, and it's these numbers that the physicists have to plug into their equations to get everything to work. For example, there's a constant related to gravity. How strongly do things attract each other? And you set that just a little bit differently, and the universe never gets stars, and then never gets planets, because stars form, obviously, by gravity. And the universe just quickly collapses in on itself. Or, if it's set the other way, if the dial is turned just too far the other way, it expands endlessly, and you never get the coalescing of matter that you get in the galaxies, and in stars, and then in planets, and then eventually our planet. So the fact that these things are tuned, and there's at least a dozen of these constants that have to be, the dial has to be set exactly right, or you never get life of any kind on a planet like Earth. And scientists have realized we have no idea why they're set the way they're set. I think when you start discovering those just givens of the universe, like it just is this way, it didn't have to be this way, but it is this way, it leaves you much more open to the possibility that it is this way because someone chose it to be this way.
have a couple of sons that are the loves of my life. And it's fascinating how peekaboo is fun to them from the very beginning. It seems there's something about being hidden and then something being revealed. I don't know if I can, sum it up scientifically, but it is fascinating to me that in all of our hearts seems to be this desire to find out what's really going on.
I look at, you go to the zoo, what animals do people want to see? They want to see the bears and the lions and the tigers. In my country, sharks are a big deal, sharks and whales. People want to be in a place where they're reminded of the fact that they are not the greatest or most important thing in the world. I mean, why are people drawn to mountains or to ocean vistas or to raging rivers or canyons? There is a yearning within the human psyche to be freed from the folly of imagining that the human experience is the highest or the greatest experience that there can be. We can't bear the idea that we are it, that this is as good as it gets, that the human experience is the highest evolution possible. We have to believe that there's something greater, something beyond, something more important to us.
I've traveled around the world. I've been to about 24 different countries. I've spoken to people from every religious background. I've talked to people who grew up in 70 years of atheistic communism. And you know what is shocking is that even in that environment, the majority of people, when you get them alone and you ask them, they say, deep down, I've always believed there must be a God or a higher power or someone up there who gave me life, who has purpose for my life. And you think about that, like, why is that so common to humanity? There's got to be some reason. And doesn't it make sense that's like this homing device in every human, pointing us back to the very source of life?
I think I have had some experiences in life that give me confidence to know there is a God. Some of it was the time I spent with my grandmother when I was very young. Sometimes I'd be in the house with her and just be the two of us. And she might sing a hymn from church, or she might pray. And as a little girl, I don't know how else to explain it except to say I could feel something when she would sing that way. That there was something very real and spiritual happening. Even though as a little girl, I sort of felt like I'm looking in on something happening between my grandmother and God, maybe. And as I got older, sometimes I'd be in a church service and I might have that same feeling that I remember having sitting in my grandmother's house. But I think it's just been a lot of those experiences over time that sort of have lumped together to say to me, this is how I know that God is real.
If you actually think it through, the idea that, let's say, okay, there's no God. We just got here by accident. We evolved out of the primordial soup over billions of years totally accidentally. God didn't guide that because he doesn't exist. So we're here. So it logically follows that life has no meaning. Now people go, okay, well, no. Life has no meaning. If you think about that, it is so bleak and horrifying that most people would know that can't be. The love that you feel for people in your life that you have felt, according to the idea, if there's no God, then that love means nothing. It's not even love. It's just a chemical reaction designed to perpetuate the species, totally by accident.
All of us, when we look at the world today, long for a better world. I mean, we look at the events that happen on the news, when we see bombs go off in the middle of crowds, when we see children being abducted and then put into the slave trade, all of us have something in us that we look at that, we know that's not right, and we yearn for a better world. There isn't something evolutionary about that. It doesn't necessarily help my survival to seek someone else's good. But it's there, it's implanted in all of us. And if we pay attention to that, I think we get a sense of the heartbeat of God.
I remember when my first son was born, and when I was growing up, I couldn't wait to be a father, and I couldn't wait to be a husband. So now I've got the wife, and we've married, we were going on 7 years at the time, and then we find out she's pregnant. We got our son, he's coming into the world, and I remember when that little guy came out, and he looked like he was 85 years old, and he had crazy amounts of hair, even on his forehead, and he wasn't terribly cute, in all honesty, from the first time he came out. He has since grown into a beautiful young man. But when I saw him, explain it. Explain the connection, explain the love, explain the awe. For me, I go back to God is love. Not that he has love, but is love. And any friends of mine that have experienced love, they've experienced that presence, that joy, that hope. I think it's all just a little sign. It's telling us that there's something more here. There's something more.
I think I realized that if there is a God, then I can't prove him, nor can I disprove him with science. That if anything, God would have to prove himself to us. God would have to overcome this enormous ontological gap that exists between us and him and actually reveal himself to us in a way that makes sense.
A lot of it is just that experience, that sort of trying and seeing, and that when we want to know more about God, he wants us to know more about him too. And I think he meets us where we are in that way.
So I'm going to ask you, if you would, to just turn to somebody near you and make a connection and talk for a moment about what makes it easy to believe in God or what makes it hard to believe in God, either for yourself or for someone you know. What makes it easy to believe in God? What makes it hard? Would you just turn to someone near you? Just turn around and chat for a moment. Okay. Oh. This is just a brief sharing today on this one. And I encourage you to take this question home and share it over lunch and share it with other people. A great question to ask your friends this week. What makes it easy to believe in God, or what makes it hard to believe in God? Let them share with you. You can't share your faith till you let them share their questions. Amen? Today we're going to hear some thoughts from two from amongst us. So I ask you to open your hearts and your ears and your minds as these two share. So I invite Stephanie Collins first to come and share with us.
Hi. I think I'm talking into this, correct?
Right into the mic.
Okay. So my journey, I guess, started when I was 16. I had voluntarily removed myself from my home. I felt that I couldn't do any worse, so maybe I could do better on my own. I was lucky to get in with a youth group at an amazing church. Most of us went to school together. It was exactly what I needed. I felt love for the first time, acceptance, being a part of something. And on September 15th, 1999, that was taken away from me and hundreds of others. Because that night at our church, a man came in and started shooting. He killed 7 people before he killed himself. He also wounded 7 other people, and he changed the lives of every person that was there. I was 16 years old, and for the first time, I really knew that I could no longer be naive and think that evil things just happened somewhere else. They happened to everybody, and you had to make a choice. It was a choice of whether you were going to let it destroy you or let it bring you out and let you shine God's love. And I started making changes in my life that day as to what kind of person I wanted to be. I wanted to be defined by my actions and not my circumstances. That circumstance that evening was what happened, but God's part of it was what happened after. There were a lot of people who asked our pastor and everyone there, well, how can you believe in God if God would let something like this happen? But God didn't let it happen. Evil let it happen. And God was there just like any parent would be. I'm no more responsible if something awful happens to my son at school. All I can do is be there to support him and love him and help him get through it. And that's exactly what God did for all of us. I was blessed to have a wonderful church family who never let any of us down. They made sure we all understood that this was not the end of anything. It was the beginning of a turning point. My life, in my eyes, is before and after that. It was a changing point. There was no going back. I had to understand that awful things can happen. But when they happen, everyone's going to be looking at you, because everyone wants to see, if you really love God, how are you going to get through this? Everyone is looking at you. You're under a microscope. And from that day, I was under a microscope, and more so to members of my family. And they wanted to see how I was going to do it on my own. And there have been days since that I have wondered what I'm doing. I have wondered, why me? How am I going to make it through this? I felt like it was the end. I felt like there was nothing I could do. I felt like I was treading water and just needed a break to breathe. But at the same time, I know now that should anything happen in my life, I can handle it. There's nothing I can't handle, because God has given me the tests up to now to know my own strength, and He's also proven to me that He's there every step of the way. So it was one of the hardest days, and every year as the anniversary of it rolls around, which was just last week, it's still hard, but it's also amazing to still hear from friends that were there that day and where their lives are now. And it's amazing to hear how that is still not a dark day for them, but a day where they realized what they had, and they realized that God's going to be there. So that's my story.
And Kathy Elder is a new seminary student in her first semester at seminary, so I've asked her if she would share.
It's been said in various ways by different theologians and writers that there is a God-shaped hole in our hearts. While cardiology tells us that this isn't exactly true, brain scans show that something amazing happens in our brains when we go from normal thought to the transcendence that comes when a Buddhist meditates or when a Christian is deep in prayer. Your brain lights up in a way that it doesn't when it's engaged in any other activity. While you don't have to believe in a deity to experience this state, this shows me that we are created to be aware that there is something greater than ourselves. The social sciences show us that the quest for knowledge and something greater than ourselves is universal. The specifics differ from culture to culture, from society to society, and even from subculture to subculture. But I doubt there's a single person in this world who has never been exposed to theological thought. Many people risk the safety of their lives and their families' lives by following their consciences and experiences that lead them to believe as they do, even acting on those beliefs when the beliefs contradict the laws of their country. In nations with an official policy of atheism and in nations with an official theocracy, people are persecuted, jailed, and even killed for their pursuit of learning about and knowing God. Either they are risking and giving their lives for nothing, or there is something greater than the laws and human persecution that created us and wants to be known. Science may never empirically prove the existence of a higher power, but we were created with a capacity for faith. If I'm honest, I first believed that God exists because that's what I was told. For most of my life, my belief in God could probably be best described as Christian deism. Basically, I believed that God created the heavens and the earth, saw that it was good, sent Jesus, boom, done, checked out, and now views us from a distance, like in that Bette Midler song. I couldn't quite grasp the concept of a loving, involved parent, friend, or redeemer when there were so many horrors in the world, and more obviously to me in my life. Brennan Manning once wrote, "The single greatest cause of atheism today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their mouths and deny him by their lifestyle." That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. Church rules regarding sexuality drove home that I am deeply flawed. Even worse, as a child born out of wedlock to a single teenaged mother, I got the message that my very existence is the product and consequence of sin. Therapy and psychotropics, while often great and necessary, were not enough to erase my shame. God, however, was, is, and will continue to be. I just had to be willing to let go of that shame. It's amazing how when I didn't trust, I found reasons that seemed to confirm my distrust. Yet when I have faith that God not only exists, but cares about me and loves me, amazing things happen. I recognize that my needs are taken care of. I see myself as worthy and become willing and able to love and forgive others. Why do I believe God exists? Because I know that a great parent, friend, and redeemer who has changed and continues to change me.
I know you will have heard a word in the video or in their stories to touch you today, or in the songs. You know, when it comes to this question of whether or not there is a God, in the Bible in Romans 1, it says there are people who have seen sufficient evidence, but they have suppressed the truth about God. They've seen evidence in our creation, our planet, and ourselves, yet they try to explain it away. In the earlier video, we heard someone say that we can't prove the existence of God, and neither can we prove that God does not exist. But again, if we turn to the Bible in Jeremiah 29, you will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart, and I will be found by you. It's a spiritual endeavor, folks. Really answering this question, is there a God, requires us to do more than just believe. Some might call it a leap of faith. At the very least, it is a matter of the heart, not just the mind. Is there an amen in the church? Amen. So here's 3 key questions I want to leave with you today for you to consider in your own self. Again, I ask the question, do you live as if there is a God, or as if there is no God? Just what Kathy said. It's not enough for us to say we believe, then act in a different way, because that's the greatest cause of people not believing, right? How do you live? Do you live as if there is a God? Now, if you say yes to that, if you believe that God does exist, do you want to know God? And then comes the question from Jeremiah 29, but put in a question instead of a statement. Will you seek God with all your heart? And that's the question we asked in the baptism and the reception of new members. Will you
Seek God with all your heart. That's how we can know, and that's how we can grow in our faith.